Quiet.
Mr. President-elect,
Go ahead.
can you state
She's asking a
categorically,
question. Don't
Mr.
be
President-elect, can you give us a question?
Don't be
You are
rude.
attacking us. Can you give us a question?
Don't be rude.
Can
No,
you
I'm
give
not
us a
going to give you a
question?
question. I'm not going to give you a question.
Can you state categorically?
You are fake news.
Sir.
I'm Dr. Dave Janda. Welcome back to Dave versus the MSM. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope you will network this information to those you know and love because they're not going to get it through the bought-off lamestream fake media or a significant number of the other independent media sources. And why do I say that? Because the information I present to you is brought to you through our platform at davejanda.com. And over the past 35 years, we have been able to develop contacts with people behind the curtain in industry and in governments, not just in the United States, but around the world. And those folks use our platform as a conduit to get that information to you and everyone you know and love. It's a bucket brigade of truth, if you will. And the goal of that truth is to keep you safe and to keep your freedoms in place. It's getting harder and harder to do. You know that. Just look at your life. If you told yourself 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that our country, our world, our lives would be the way they are today, you'd be like, come on, that's crazy. No, it's not crazy. It's deliberate, actually, that this is where we are. Too many people believe that we're where we're at because, well, that was an accident. It's a bad coincidence. Or it's because these people that are in these governments have been installed, operative word installed in these governments around the world at the federal level, the state level, the local level. Well, they're just incompetent. No, they're not incompetent. Anyone telling you that this is because of an accident or bad coincidence or because of incompetence is lying to you. This is all willful, and it's all planned. That's not conspiracy theory. It might be conspiracy, but it's conspiracy reality. And one of the big entities they use to take money from you and launder it and enrich themselves, all the way up to the banking families that run this show, this horror show, is war. War. And the syndicate funds both sides. Right now, we got a four-front war. Four. I've talked about this, but it bears repeating. We got the Russia-Ukraine theater. We got the Middle East theater of operations. And we have the China-Taiwan theater that moves a little bit to the front burner, then to the back burner, then to the front burner. And then we have the fourth front, the domestic front, in your individual countries. No matter what country you live in, there is a war against you, against every law-abiding citizen. There is a war. And the goal of our adversary, and understand, they are sinister and they are evil and they are incapable of anything and everything. That's one of the big problems. Look, all of us that are law-abiding and moral and have ethics, we go, they're bad, but they surely can't. No, they are psychopaths. They are psychopaths. And they're capable of anything and everything on a mass scale. Look at the wars that they hatch. And it's not like we haven't been warned. I've spoken about General Smedley Butler before. At the time of his death in the 1930s, 1940s, he was the most dedicated and decorated Marine. And he wrote a book in 1935 called War is a Racket. It is a racket that benefits, just as it did in 1935, the syndicate, just as it does today. Again, a couple of his things he wrote in the book. War is just a racket. A racket is best described, I believe, as something that is not what it seems to the majority of the people. Only a small inside group knows what it is about. It is conducted for the benefit of the very few at the expense of the masses. I wouldn't go to war again as I've done to protect some lousy investment of the bankers. There are only two things we should fight for. One is the defense of our homes, and the other is the Bill of Rights. War for any other reason is simply a racket. It may seem odd for me, a military man, to adopt such a comparison. Truthfulness compels me to do so. I spent 35 years and 4 months in active military service as a member of this country's most agile military force, the Marine Corps. I served in all commissioned ranks from second lieutenant to major general. And during that period, I spent most of my time being a high-class muscle man for big business, for Wall Street, for the bankers. In short, I was a racketeer, a gangster for the banksters. I suspected I was just part of a racket at the time. Now I'm sure of it. Like all the members of the military profession, I never had a thought of my own until I left the service. My mental faculties remained in suspended animation while I obeyed the orders of higher-ups. This is typical with everyone in military service. During those years, I had, as the boys in the back room would say, a swell racket. Looking back on it, I feel that I could have given Al Capone a few hints. The best Capone could do was operate his rackets in 3 districts in the Midwest. I, on the other hand, operated on 3 continents. It's Medley Butler. True then, true now. And they continue to use that card, the war card. Why? Because it's successful for them. Whenever they throw the war card on the table, they end up, the cult, the banksters and the bankster families, get more power, more control, and more financial resources. It's that simple. And in the process, those that they call you and me and everyone we know, the 99.9% of us that aren't part of the banking cartel syndicate, they call us useless eaters. And it's the useless eaters that get drafted. It's the useless eaters that go to war. It's the useless eaters that die. It's the useless eaters get maimed from their war that they created, or wars, plural. That's not an accident. It's not a coincidence. And it's not from incompetence. And then they tell you, well, Biden recently said this, the war is good for the economy. His little pet rat that was also a pet rat for Obama and a pet rat for W. Bush and his tight friends with Dick Cheney, Victoria Nuland, who brought about this whole mess in Ukraine as far back as 2014 when she helped that whole chaotic overthrow of a government when Obama was president. They're going to tell you, yeah, but the silver lining is war is really good for the economy. From William Hartung, war is bad for you and the economy. Joe Biden wants you to believe that spending money on weapons is good for the economy. That tired old myth regularly repeated by the political leaders of both parties, one political party, by the way, that's where he's wrong. The Republicrats, owned and operated by a criminal syndicate, the banking syndicate, Republicrats. I've told you that for 13 and a half years on the radio. Those who know me know that I've been telling them that for almost 40 years. That tired old myth could help create an even more militarized economy that could threaten our peace and prosperity for decades to come. Any short-term gains from pumping in more arms spending will be more than offset by the long-term damage caused by crowding out of new industries and innovations, while vacuuming up funds needed to address other urgent national priorities. Like, maybe border security? David Stockman, who during the Reagan administration was in charge of the Office of Management and Budget, recently wrote about Washington's entrenched war machine. The war party is entrenched in the nation's capital, where it is dedicated to economic interests and ideological perversions that guarantee perpetual war. These forces ensure endless waste on armaments. They cause the inestimable death and human suffering that stems from 21st century high-tech warfare. And they inherently generate terrorist blowback from those upon whom the war party inflicts its violent actions. Worse still, Washington's great war machine and teeming national security industry is its own agent of self-perpetuation. When it's not invading, occupying, and regime changing, its vast apparatus of internal policy bureaus and outside contractors, lobbies, think tanks, and NGOs is busy generating reasons for new imperial ventures. Well, we got a forefront war right now. Ron Paul recently wrote, "Of all my dealings with people in D.C. since 1988, the one person who stands out is the most honest, moral, and sensible and ethical person I dealt with was Ron Paul." True. He recently wrote, after 2 years, the neocons, the globalists, are desperate for more war. You name where. Ukraine, Middle East, Taiwan, domestically. They have nothing better than a good chaotic civil event, right? According to these scum. Yeah. Here's what he wrote. "They try to wrap their terrible policies in the American flag and sell it to the American people as something reflective of our values. If you oppose another neocon war, well, then you are unpatriotic according to their trickery. But Americans actually are waking up to the lies of the neocons and more are realizing that there is no we when the neocons are trying to sell another war. It is them. The we in the equation are the people who are being robbed to pay for what will inevitably be another neocon failure. Does any American still believe that Washington was, quote, defending democracy and freedom, end quote, when it used a pack of lies to get us into Iraq, where a country was destroyed and perhaps 1 million people were killed? How about when, after 20 years in Afghanistan, we managed to replace the Taliban with the Taliban? Yeah, and leave billions of armaments that are currently being used in these theaters of operation now? Yeah. That was an accident. No, it wasn't. That was a bad coincidence. No, it wasn't. That was because of incompetence. No, it wasn't. It was willful. And Syria and Libya and all the other interventions? Was Washington, quote, defending democracy, end quote, when Victoria Nuland and the rest of the neocons successfully overthrew a democratically elected government in Ukraine in 2014, which has led to this goat rodeo mess disaster right now? Yeah, no, not an accident, not a coincidence, not from incompetence. It's getting harder and harder for the American people to choke down the war lies of the neocons. That is something that should make us feel optimistic. Americans no longer support the neocon war project in Ukraine, and that's something to celebrate. Perhaps in a last show of desperation, Victoria Nuland debuted another argument for keeping the war money flowing for Ukraine. She said, quote, "We have to remember that the bulk of this money is going right back into this economy to make those weapons," end quote. And we've already addressed that with Basement Joe. And the cult will do anything to undermine peace. Viktor Orban, Hungarian Prime Minister, says the U.S. sabotaged peace for Ukraine early on and throughout. And remember when the cult sent Boris Johnson, the then Prime Minister of the UK, to go to Ukraine and say, no peace deals. Did that in March of 2022. A month after that, it started. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban claimed the United States lobbying was significant in preventing Ukraine from signing a peace deal with Russia shortly after the conflict between the two countries intensified in February. The end result of that, let's look at some statistics, courtesy of the cult, the warmongering cult, just in Ukraine. This is from Mike Frederberg. 500,000 Ukrainians killed in action explains a whole lot. 500,000. So let's compare the 500,000 deaths in Ukraine to other wars. United States death killed in action. Civil War, 215,000. World War I, 53,000. World War II, 292,000. Korean War, 34,000. Vietnam War, 47,000. Ukrainians killed, at least 500,000. Their war machine is never ending. And the tangential effects. In March of 2022, you won't hear this in Bought Off Lamestream Fake Media, but a critical aspect of the war on everybody, to make everybody in the world destitute, was implemented when the United States and the West said, Russia, we're confiscating $300 billion worth of your assets. And we're going to keep them. And now they're talking about not just keeping them, but giving them to Ukraine. Okay. What happened when that occurred? Well, if you were in charge of another country and you had assets in the United States, what would you have done? What would you do now? You would say, wait a minute, if they're going to do that to Russia, who has nuclear weapons, and our little country doesn't, and confiscate their assets because the United States and the West didn't like what they were doing, well, maybe they're going to point to me and say, hey, country X, we want you to do A, B, and C. And I go, no, we're not doing A, B, and C. Are they going to confiscate mine? And what has happened is all these countries have been pulling their assets out of U.S. denominated money, the dollar, investments. And they're putting it in a store of value that they know for thousands of years has worked. Can you say physical gold and physical silver? Just look at the buying of these other countries around the world since March of 2022. It's been enormous. And getting out of the dollar. The ramifications of that part of the war on the financial side is a destruction of the reserve currency of the United States. And it's built up this BRICS organization. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, now Saudi Arabia is a part of it, and 41 other countries have enlisted to join BRICS. They're saying, you know what, we'd rather deal with, and what's BRICS doing? Well, we're going to create, and we're in the process of creating a trading currency to bypass the U.S. dollar, to bypass that SWIFT, that U.S. dollar-denominated trading system, and create our own trading system that's not based on the dollar, that's based on a BRICS currency, or maybe one of the country's currencies, like yuan from China or the ruble from Russia, and back those currencies, whether it's the BRICS trading currency or the yuan or the ruble, with gold, with silver, with oil, with natural gas. Something that the dollar is backed by nada, nothing, zero. The faith and credit of the United States government. The credit of the United States government? Wait a minute, we're $35 trillion in debt. What? Right. the ramifications of their endless wars are huge. And the wars are also used to divert your attention from what they're really doing. And what they're really doing is bringing down the financial system of the world. Because they can create not just millions, not just some billions, but hundreds of billions of victims, of casualties. No, these people are psychopaths. And this is their goal. Now you're going to say, well, wait a minute, if they bring down the financial system, the bankers, they're going to hurt themselves. No, they're not, because they've prepositioned themselves. They've protected themselves. Why do you think they've been buying all this gold and silver? I've told you, it's thousands of years have shown it's the best financial insurance policy. Why do you think they're doing this? Why did they create paper out of nothing? These phony contracts that aren't backed by anything to keep the price down so they could buy more and to try to dissuade you from doing what they're doing. Endless wars. They get more power, more control, more financial resources for themselves. They're pigs. They can never have enough. And the added, as they see it, what we see as tragedy, they see as benefit. The added benefit for them is less useless eaters, more divided useless eaters, more destitute useless eaters. Protect yourself. War is a racket. General Smedley Butler was 100% correct. Do not buy into what you're seeing in the bought-off lamestream fake media. Protect yourself. There is no white hat in government. There's no white hat in the military that's going to come knocking on your door and saying, we got it fixed. Everything's fine. Come out and play. You are the white hat. Protect yourself on many different fronts. And part of that is empowering yourself with information. And that's what we're there for at davejanda.com. Why do you think they censor my videos? But I keep putting them out on these social media platforms that at least try to get people engaged. Because the goal is to get you over to davejanda.com where the real meat of the issues are and information is. Because I can't talk about it on social media platforms. I can't talk about it on the radio. I find a way to get some information out there, but the real meat is at davejanda.com. Come on by. It's uncensored. It's a protected site. Until next time, Dave Janda signing off. Dream big and dare to fail. Thanks for your time today.